Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Flutter Boring Show. I'm your host, Fitz. It's just going to be me today, but hopefully we can still get some interesting things talked about and done. So I'm working again on the Hacker News app that we've been working on for a while, and I was poking around at it and noticed there's a couple of interesting UI updates and tweaks that we could do. And in particular, we can switch between the different story types from top stories to news stories and whatnot. And we also have this notion of a favorite. So I can favorite one of these stories, and when I go to the favorites, it's totally empty. And I also can't go back. The app gives me some crashes, and I have to full restart to get back to anything other than the favorites page. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to look at the favorites and see if we can do something about actually making them show up. So that's what we're going to start with, is going to just making the favorites page have the list of favorites. If we go and look at the source code for it right now, it's rather plain. It's got nothing but a container with some text that says favorites. And when we look around and see where the favorites are coming from, and I'm not entirely familiar with the code. I've just kind of I've looked through it a little bit, and obviously I've been here before and have touched the code before, but I'm not 100% familiar. So let's walk through it together. And specifically, when we go through, we want to find out where that favorites page is coming from first. And as we scroll down, eventually we find our friend the scaffold. And within the scaffold, we have the app bar. And that app bar is where that menu is coming from. And here we go down. Eventually, we have the bottom navigation bar, which provides us the news stories and the top stories. And then we have the drawer. Great. And within the drawer, we have our favorites. Okay. Now, well, let's find where those, wrong buttons. Let's find where those favorites come from. So our generate route, if you remember from an episode where Philip and I were doing page route transitions and whatnot to get some funky little things going on when you click on different things, we're looking at what is the name of the route that we're going to, and if it's named favorites, we're going to the favorites page. So that's where it's coming from. We're coming from the drawer in the app bar, and that's just a list tile that when we tap on it, creates a new route for us here. And so that's how we get here. The other question I had when I was going through this is when I click on these stars, so I can go through and click as many of these as I want, something happens. Obviously, the icon changes from a not filled in star to a filled in star. Is there anything else happening though? So let's go back to the main.dart, and I'm going to look for a star. So here we go within our, let's see, we've got this build method, which is this item. So that looks like probably an item within our stories list. And within that, we've got our icon button, which has our star. We have our star border. We have our star filled in. You can see those icons nicely over here. And when we add a favorite, we're adding it to this database, which comes from a provider for my database. Great. Okay, that sounds like a good place to start. Let's pull that out and bring it over into our favorites page. My hope is that the favorites page is properly as part of the chain of inheritance for the provider. And we can verify that a little bit if we find the references for the favorites page. It comes from here. The context that we have here is coming from this build method, which is coming from our main homepage state. And let's see, where is it's coming from my homepage, and my homepage is up here as part of this generating the route up top. And we've got a change notifier for the database all the way up here as part of the multi-provider at the very top. So great. So in case you weren't able to follow that as quickly as I went through it, we started from the favorites page and we worked our way up to where that provider was coming from. And in particular, this database, my database, we'll talk to whoever named that later, but my database is one of the providers at the very top of our widget tree. And so that means when I eventually get down to the favorites page, that context is basically providing us the location of this widget within the tree. And so since that context came from up higher in the tree, eventually leading up to that provider up top, we should be able to do this. So once I have this line in order to get my database, I'm just going to fix my imports here, make sure I get all of the imports. This is not the correct place for that since I don't have a handle on the context, but now I do. Great. Now I have my database. Cool. What do we want to do with it? Well, realistically, what I really want to get is just a list of the favorites on this page. And so I'm just going to do some layout tweaks here. I'm going to change this. And I don't want to wrap it with a column. I just want to make it a column. And my goal here is to have just a list of all the favorites. And we can still have it start with the title of favorites, and we'll go select that. So I've got the title of favorites. And I'm going to add a list view, which is the list of things, list of favorites. We'll start there. I'll just get our basic layout working before we tie anything else to it. And as you can see, we've got some build errors here. Probably need to fix some of our parentheses and brackets. And this is a fun little thing going on with the layout. If you noticed recently, we had a new article published that was talking about different layout issues and how to debug those and walk through them. And one of the super useful things in doing that is the Dart dev tools. And I've got them here, got them already open. And we should be able, well, this is because my column has issues, and the root cause here is that we have our column within a list with a list view within it, and both of those are trying to figure out and sort of guess on what the size of them needs to be, or the height of those things needs to be. The list view in particular, right now we're just passing it an empty builder, more or less, and it doesn't know how many things to put in it. So we're going to start here. I'm just going to give it a 0. It's a way to tell the list view. Don't worry about trying to give all or make space for an infinite number of items. Let's just start with 0. We still don't have this favorites coming up. It's because it still doesn't quite know how big it needs to be. And so I'm going to wrap this in a widget, which is just an expanded. Get that? Now our favorites has shown back up, which means we've got the list view given the proper amount of space within the column. The column can figure out based on that. The expanded is basically saying, give you the maximum amount of space available, but no more. So not infinite or unbounded amount of space, but the maximum amount of space that the column has to give you. Great. And the column's not a scrolling thing, so the expanded is able to give us that scrollable view of the column within it, or the list view within it. Turn off my select widget mode. So now I've got the list view started up here, and just to make sure this is working, I'm going to add a new list tile and just give it a title, some text, my favorite if I can type properly. So I've got the list of my favorites, but I need to actually make sure our count is there. Great, my favorite has shown up. Fun fact, from the typography episode, you'll see that the text here was able to pick up the Boogaloo font that Philip and I chose for all of the subtitles. So nice little thing happening automatically for us there. Okay, now we've got our list view within the column, properly rendered within our expanded. We've got a handle on my database, but we're not doing anything with it yet. And this is what we can do here. We'll change things up a little bit, because right now it's in a stateless widget, but it kind of feels almost stateful because I've got this my database thing, and that's because it probably should be a stateful widget. And so let's change it to a stateful widget, and let's within init state, we'll start by calling the super, and then I'm going to have, oops, let's get the list of favorites. Okay, and when it starts out, favorites is empty. We haven't been able to figure that out yet. None of the code has done anything with it, so we're just going to initialize it initially to 0. Let's wire up our list view to pull from this favorites thing. And our item count is going to be the number of things within that favorites list. And the second parameter here to this builder, let's actually use it now. Let's get our index, and let's make the title of these things the favorites 0. And I know that this favorites object, if you look at it, it's coming from our database. So our favorites database has a item called a title. And this should actually be not a list of favorites, but a list of favorite class items. There you go. That's the actual object parsed from the table. So we have an actual string property named title that we can use as part of our list tile. So I've changed our stateless widget to a stateful widget. That means that our hot reload needs to be reset because I've changed that type of the widget within the tree. And I'm going to do that, and we can go back to our favorites. And we're getting there. We're getting close. We don't have any layout issues, so that's a good start. But we've still got this my database thing that we're not handling that we can actually use here. And just to get started with, and I know that this is not best practice, don't do this, but we're going to look at it anyways, just to get started, just to prototype it out and see how this will work. My database has an all favorites getter. And what's fun about that is that it's just a future. So it's a thing that's going to happen at some point in the future. And so I'm just going to kick that off here and say, once it finishes, so go grab me all of my favorites. And then right now, I'm going to just print out the value. Just dump them to the debug console to make sure we've actually got something there that we can work with. And sure enough, after hot reload has picked it up, we've got some list of favorites. Neat. Okay. That seems to work. A really simple thing that we could do here is to chain this with a set state. And within that set state, we could set our favorites to that list of favorites. If you look at the list ID, the type here, we have just a list of favorite things. And that's all great. That's good. We'll notice a little bit of a bug in the code that I wrote, though. If you see that we've got the same article listed again and again and again within the list, probably, well, for as many favorites as we have, because I properly put the length here of the favorites. You notice within this, within the debug console, all of our favorites are not building up a quantum computing workforce. We also have a couple other favorites, a few other different favorite articles. And let's just change this 0 to index to get that to actually pull up our list of favorites. Cool. Okay, we're making progress. And so this all favorites then with the future doesn't seem to be quite right. There's something off about that. And what we can do, if we look at this, it's all favorites, and then there's a stream thing. Ooh, that seems to be interesting. Something that we might be able to use. And what if we did a StreamBuilder instead? So something that's going to build with the result of the stream. So first thing is going to be, let's get that all favorites as a stream. Okay, we've got our stream set up, and we'll come back to this thing a little bit later. We'll comment it out for now, and we'll return our StreamBuilder. So we have something that's going on here. And you'll see in our console that builder has to be not null, which makes sense. We'll format. Okay. Now we've got our StreamBuilder going, and we've got some things happening here, which is that we don't return the items in our list. So let's take a look at StreamBuilder. Ooh, an example code. Look at that. Looking through the documentation, it's a widget that builds itself on the latest snapshot of the internet, of the interaction with a stream. Excellent. So looking at this code, you have a StreamBuilder that has a builder snapshot of int. So this is going to be the data type of whatever our stream is emitting. And so you can kind of tell down here that the StreamBuilder is giving us a list of favorite objects. So that's the type of thing that we're getting back. And so there's a snapshot that we can use to determine what data is in there, if there was an error, and actually populate our list with those things. So the easiest way, we can just kind of ignore the connection state for now. Again, we're just trying to quick prototype to make sure that these things work properly. And so let's return our column with these ListView doodads. And now this is not quite doing what it looks like it works, but it's because it's doing exactly what we had just done. We have this future that we're waiting for once it finishes, and then we're getting the favorite. And that's not great. And the reason it's not great is because we're still then kind of waiting in the build method for these things to complete. Now with futures, we've got some asynchronous nature going on here, but we can use streams to help mitigate that. So I'm not going to use that anymore. But once we do that, and we refresh, go back into our favorites, and they're not going to be there because we don't have that set state happening there. So this snapshot, let's actually define it. Snapshot of list of favorite things. That's our snapshot. And from the snapshot, we ought to be able, as we go through the documentation, and see that, yes, snapshot.data has the thing that we're trying to get. And so we could do snapshot.data. There's our length. And you can see that it gave me that it's of type list favorites. So I'll pop that into the list tile as well, and sure enough, it looks like it's pulling it in. All right, and we'll totally refresh just to make sure as we wait for the hot restart to pick that up. Oh, well, as we're waiting for it, I'll do a little bit of just clean up on the formatting here so we can get it more of our nice nesting. And there our hot refresh finished. And great, we've got that all finished out. Now we've got our favorites listed. Cool. There's some other little simple things we could do here, like for example, we could make the leading of this like icons.star, just kind of getting an indication that this is a favorite. One thing we might want to do in the future, I'll add a to-do here. To-do for me is to make this tappable to get to remove the favorite. Seems like a reasonable thing to do, and since we've got a handle on my database here, we should be able to do that without too much trouble, and that should be fine. For now, let's leave that as is. I would also like to do an on tap to bring up the actual article itself. If we have the favorite there, it would be nice to be able to read the article that we put there. For now, again, we'll just do a to-do. For loading the actual article itself. So that seems reasonable. An interesting thing here is that when we look through the rest of the app, because we have, and I'll restart again because we haven't figured out that bottom bar to get that to work. But the top stories and the news stories function almost identically, and part of how they do that is they're both really the same class, and they just are loading from a different URL. And if that's coming from this HN tabs thing, which loads a Hacker News tab, and that Hacker News tab has a stories type, and with that stories type, it's able to then go through this fetch thing, which is building up the URL to fetch based on that type. Otherwise, these are exactly the same. The favorites feels like it should be about the same too. A challenge there is that these are of type article rather than of type favorite. So we might need to figure something else out there. So like all good code, I'm going to add another to-do. To-do. Make favorites act like top and new stories. They're very similar. I feel like they should do about the same thing. That star interaction is going to be the exact same. If you look through this where the star shows up, let's search for star. All it's doing is taking my database and adding or removing it from that. That's more or less it. Which is also part of a StreamBuilder, just to determine whether it's part of a favorite already or not. And that's all it's trying to do, is just figure out, based on the contents of that database, it's checking to see if it's a favorite already. If it is, make it a filled in star. If it's not, make it an unfilled in star. It seems like the favorite page should do the same thing. So that's a good to do for that. And that might take some tweaking on these data structures a little bit to make sure those happen. So that's our favorites page. Our favorites page is now populated with the favorites that we wanted to load up. We've got some more work to do here. We've got a number of to-dos left to work on, but this is progress. We've improved the app a little bit, and hopefully you've learned a little bit about stream builders and how to wire them up with a data coming from a provider, which is backed by a database. And so there's more to-dos always, and I hope you come back and catch up with us when we try to fix them next time. All right, thanks everyone.